Good evening, everybody. As I promise, every Sunday at 8 o'clock, we're going to have sessions which we have dubbed Black Consciousness 101. So this is the first session we're going to have. I greet you, all those who are joining us. This is the very first session of our Sunday evening engagements. I have been provoked by events that happened Siyakubongelela Zamikhaya, and we greet you all who have joined. This is the very first session of our political education, if you like, on going back to the basics of Black consciousness. I have dubbed these sessions Black Consciousness 101. And today we're going to talk about the mental state of the oppressed, basically the process that leads to that. I had left my notes at the other section of the house. So, what really provoked me to initiate these conversations? Kyalidumedisa kaofela, Comrade Jabulani, Comrade Noah, Sianbingela Lanonke, who have joined this session, is the very first session where we're going to discuss really trying to revive some kind of critical consciousness to understand the state of being Black in the world and thinking through what it would mean to be truly liberated. The 30 years of the ANC rule has erased from the Black mind a sense of why we're oppressed, who's oppressing us, and how we're going to get out of this. The ANC's misrule has provided a serious cover for whiteness. The ANC corruption has provided cover for whiteness. And it has erased really our understanding of racism, who are the beneficiaries, how racism works, and how we as Black people must organize to fight towards our liberation. For instance, what really provoked me was this young white man going to China to talk on the theme of Black economic empowerment. A white boy goes all the way to China to speak on the theme of Black economic empowerment. And the majority of Black people saw nothing wrong with that. That we are being represented by a white boy who's going to talk about the conditions that we Black people are experiencing as a result of white oppression. And Black people are clapping. Black people see this boy as a messiah because he's providing some critical inputs. That made me understand that there's been erosion of Black thought. There's been erosion of even Black pride. The fact that we allow a white boy to go and represent us. And we think that is normal, it's acceptable. Black economic empowerment topic being undertaken by a white boy. We are economically disempowered as a consequence of white oppression. as a consequence of the privileges that this white boy got. The fact that he went to the best universities, he read black literature, black radical literature, and he is regurgitating all that we have been saying as black people, but now it is seen as, wow, this is quite essential truth. This boy is representing our feelings, our hopes, our desires. A white boy that goes to China to speak on our behalf is basically taking the black voices away and inserting a white voice that appropriates blackness. The Black Economic Summit has to do with black interest, has to do with black challenges of economic empowerment, which we black people suffer as a consequence of whiteness. He is a beneficiary of the white system that we are fighting against. But we, as black people in this country, are celebrating this boy. Not only that, he even, I see now, he says he was even in Burkina Faso representing the youth. You know, the black youth in this country, over 60% of it is unemployed. It suffers the most economic exclusion. Now you have a white boy that speaks on its behalf. A white boy that has all the privileges that come from directly oppressing and dispossession of black people. And we as black people will allow our voices again to be marginalized by giving a white boy the space that correctly belongs to us. The thing that gets to me is how black people see no problem with that. How did we come to this point where white representation of black voices is not an issue? How did we come to this point where the displacement of black representation is not an issue? So I am saying, if we allow this erosion of critical black thought to continue, we will get a white president very soon. And you know, this is also part of the problem of the ANC. The failures of the ANC, the fact that it is corrupt, the fact that it is not serving our people, is giving this sense that maybe whites can save us again. That's what a lot of reactionary black people are thinking. You know, I mean, let's just take the last elections. White people in this country, I used to think they are about 10%. No, they are only 7.3% white people. And the DA got 21% of the vote. White people should be getting only about 7% of the vote, given their population size. But the DA has 21% votes. So the majority of people that are voting for the DA are black people. So you already have that erosion that has happened in the political space. And now it is happening more and more in the social space. So there is overrepresentation of whiteness already in the political space. And through this move by this chap, this young white guy who speaks our language, we are going to erode even further the political possibility of black representation. And the more black people's consciousness erodes, the more black people don't think about themselves as black first, the more black people defer to whiteness, we're going to have a representation by white people once again, given the right to rule over us by black people. Let us go back to the statistics. White people are only about 7.3% of the population. But their party, the Democratic Alliance, has 21.8%, almost 23%, 22%, yeah. almost 22%, from a population base of 7%. Who is voting for the DA? Black people. Who is the DA? You see, failure to appropriately characterize the place of white people is creating this possibility for black people to support their own oppression. So we need to therefore educate ourselves to sharpen our analysis of white racism, white power, and where we are as black people. Because we are failing now to appropriately understand this sharp distinction between whiteness and blackness. And as I'm saying, part of this is the creation of the ANC through its massive failures to serve black people. Now, Thomas Sankara says that as revolutionaries, we don't have the right to say we are tired of explaining. We must never stop explaining. We know that when the people understand, they cannot help but follow us. So, we're going to educate each other. It's a revolutionary duty to do so. Because our people are lost, and they're getting further lost. And it's the duty of revolutionary people to educate our people. Educate ourselves. We ourselves need education because we are beginning to get eroded in terms of our critical consciousness. Now, Steve Biko was very clear about this question. He says the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. The most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed. Now, white people understood this very well. That is why when the colonizers arrived here, the first thing they did was to deal with the mind of the African. We all know the story of the domestication of an elephant. An elephant, if you take it as a child, as a baby elephant, and you fasten it on a rope, and then it tries to get out, it doesn't succeed. After a while, it accepts its condition. That is conditioning of the mind. We also have the story of the mouse and the cat. I heard that story a long time ago when I was a young person in the Black Consciousness movement. We were taught there that a mouse that gets the education of a cat becomes easy lunch for the cat. Because a mouse that gets education of a cat, it imagines itself a cat. And therefore, when it sees a cat, its natural instinct of flying, of running away, is undercut. And it sees itself in the cat because it got the education of a cat. And therefore, it's going to embrace the cat. This is, I want to argue, the position of black people. Malcolm X, at the same time, teaches us about the house Negro and the field Negro. You know, we must just remember that how your mind is conditioned is by your situation. The field Negro, Malcolm X tells us, it works away from the master. It works very hard in difficult conditions. It hates the master. The house Negro is close proximity to the master. It is the foot of the master. The master gives the house Negro his old clothes, and the house Negro therefore believes that the master is a good person. But the field Negro is very angry, again, because of his conditioning. So in South Africa, we have the same situation of house Negroes and field Negroes. Mostly our education system is responsible for creating this mentality of a house Negroes. Because it says you can make a people be what you want them to be. Just like Asada teaches us, and I quote her, people get used to anything The less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance of it grows. After a while, people think oppression is the normal state of things. But to be free, you have to be acutely aware of being a slave. So, we're going to have to do this, educate each other about the state of blackness. Now, let us look at how the South African black was conditioned, how mental oppression actually happened. Well, when the colonizers arrived here, they set up 3 institutions. They set up the school, they set up the church, they set up the court. That include the prison. And normally, these 3 institutions all operated in the same space. So, the church was to move us away from our gods into accepting the white God. And that's how they tamed us. That's how they made us acceptable to their white rule. Sonke sabangama qoboka. There's the story in the Eastern Cape where the early missionaries were engaged in Christianizing black people, and they created divisions amongst our people where those who accepted Western modernity and Christianity, and Amakaba, those who refused. And those who refused, Amakaba, were badly treated by the colonial system. So, and then you have, as I say, the school to educate a class which became the managerial class, who then manages the affairs of the colonial system. That's why they built universities. Do you think they loved us that much that they would build universities for us? No, they built a university to create a class of blacks who speak English like me and you, who imagine themselves white, and who will manage the affairs of the colonizer. That is why in some situations where, even when the colonizer have left, it's physically, the black people that stays behind to manage the state continue the colonial system because they are mentally conditions as colonial subject. And those who refuse to enter Western modernity, they were dealt with by violence. That's why you have the church to break your spirit, to turn you into a Christian. You have the school to prepare you as your role as a junior partner of the white system. And you have the police and the court to discipline those who refuse to enter Western modernity. So the mind, the contemporary mind of the black person is a creation of all that system to prepare us for subserviency, to prepare us to serve the white system. So you have people like Steve Biko who comes in and interrupts that process and say, no, we need black consciousness to counter white consciousness. So black consciousness then says, no, we are not subject of whiteness. We are black first. We have our own systems of thinking, of thought. We have our own systems of rule. We have our own cultural practices which are not heathen. And, that's how the white system characterized the cultural practices of black people. When you entered Western modernity, you became Christianized, you have to drop your black things. Imbola, Amaxhosa, that's why the Kabas are called Umbol, because they still put in the white ochre, the red ochre on their faces. But the white system in South Africa has been so thorough that we today dress like them, pray to the white God. It is true, the Christian God is basically the white God. Our cultural expressions and practices are looked down upon. So that is the victory of the white system. But that victory is important in terms of how in today's world, the mind of the black person is so easily susceptible to accept whiteness. That is why this white boy is so easily accepted to represent us in a black discussion. So the ANC was at the beginning led by this first coconut, Amaqobok. That is why even 6 years after Bambata had put up a big fight for land in 1912, 1906, Bambata was fighting for land physically. But the ANC in 1912 went all the way to London to go and beg the throne and say, if you look at the letters, we are your subjects. We are being harassed by Afrikaner barbarians. We respect the throne. Please come to our rescue. That's the pleadings of the ANC leaders, who, as I say, were product of the education system that erased their blackness, their Africanness, and created this subservient African. The same subservient African today is there. If you listen to Prince Mashele, for instance, he's a clear example of that. Somebody like Penwell, the Black Pen, is a clear example of that. Mashaba, people like Musi Maimani, and others are clear examples of this violent representation of whiteness to black bodies. But the thinking that accept whiteness is pervasive. Our people believe in white people. That is why even now they are saying that Helen Zille is going to come and rule us in Johannesburg. And our people will vote for Helen Zille. Helen Zille, who is harassing and running a racist exclusionary process in the Western Cape, our people are going to accept white rule because, as we say in Setswana, setlhare sa motho ke lekgowa. But that comes from all that process of oppression and colonialism. And remember, those three institutions, the school, the church, and prison, and courts, are the ones that have created the modern African who's so susceptible to whiteness. That is why we accept the white boy to represent us. And because he speaks a little bit a language of radicalism, we believe that this man is here for us. That is why our people, the majority, as I say, vote for the Democratic Alliance, a party that is unapologetically white, anti-black, racist, representing land thieves. Our people go and they put an X next to the face of the Democratic Alliance racist. But as I say, that is the benefits for the white system, for the investments that they've made since they arrived here. The investment they made through the schooling system, through the religious system, through the court system, through almost the intellectual apparatus. The thinking system is white. And that is why it's so easy to accept whiteness. So that is the challenge that we have. I have bought today, it's just upstairs, I write what I like. And I was thinking today what we will focus on is on chapter 5, which is titled, We Blacks. And here Steve Biko basically tells us about the state of black people at a time. And so we will have to see how black people today correlates to that characterization of Steve Biko when he was beginning his black consciousness movement, thinking about fighting for freedom. He had to think about what is the problem and what is the state of the minds of black people. And I quote him here where he says, black people under the Smart's government, were oppressed, but they were still men. They failed to change the system for many reasons, which we shall not consider here. But the type of a black man we have today has lost his manhood. Reduced to an obliging shell, he looks with awe at the white power structure and accepts what he gets as inevitable. So Steve Biko here tells us that the black people at the time were so oppressed and never accepted the state of their oppression. He says they lost their manhood. They were reduced to obliging shells. They will look at the white power structure and have accepted as inevitable their position. So that is the state of black people that Steve Biko had to deal with. I want to argue that even today, the state of black people, the minds of black people, as a result, of course, partly of the ANC rule, is that we accept the white system. Not only that, we are so easily distracted and misled. For instance, the white power structure, which is the Stellenbosch Mafia, which is the people who stole our land and have our economy, were able to convince the majority of us that the problem in South Africa is the problem of Jacob Zuma and the Guptas. State capture became the problem. Not landlessness, not the fact that we don't have the economy, not the fact that the economy is held by a few, but President Zuma and the Guptas. By the way, I'm writing a book on that just to explain the fight President Zuma was putting with the support of the Guptas to deal with this real problem of the white power structure, which still holds our land, our economy, and our lives. So Steve Biko characterized black people at the time such. And then he goes on, and I quote him, he says, deep inside, his anger mounts at the accumulating insult, but he vents it in the wrong direction, on the fellow men in the township, on the property of black people. No longer does he trust leadership, for the 1963 mass arrests were blamable on the bungling by the leadership, nor is there any to trust. So you see there, Biko now explains that fear of the white system, of the white man, leads to an intra-black conflict. So black people are fighting each other. Black people's anger is directed at the leadership, not to the white system, which is exactly what is happening now. We are fighting amongst ourselves. And it is why Helen Zille can become a real option. That is why this white boy is seen as a messiah, because we are involved in a conflict amongst ourselves when we should be looking at the real problem outside of ourselves, which is Stellenbosch, which is white monopoly capital, which is white power, which still holds our economy. We are fighting amongst ourselves. And the ANC, by its failures, has created a very convenient situation where black people are unable to look above the ANC corruption, the ANC mismanagement, the ANC's lack of service delivery, the ANC of theft. And therefore, we internally focused. And as a consequence, the white system is going to provide, as it's already showing, a white messiahs to assist black people, so-called, out of this problem. And then Steve Biko says, and I quote him again here, all in all, the black man has become a shell, a shadow of a man, completely defeated, drowning in his own misery, a slave, an oxen, bearing the yoke of oppression with sheepish timidity. This is the first truth, bitter as it might seem, that we have to acknowledge before we can start on any program designed to change the status quo. I want to repeat this paragraph by Steve Biko. He says, all in all, the black man has become a shell, a shadow of a man, completely defeated, drowning on his own misery, a slave, an ox, bearing the yoke of oppression with sheepish timidity. This is the first truth, bitter as it may seem, that we have to acknowledge before we can start on any program designed to change the the status quo. Now, what is this mental state of black people today? Let us be honest with ourselves. We are a defeated people. We look at the white. I mean, some of us are praising Orania, for instance. Some of us are praising AfriForum. Some even joined AfriForum. So black people are in the same state that Steve Biko said they were when he started his Black Consciousness organization. And today, our state of mental oppression, self-hate, marginalization is partly created by the ANC as well. So the key thing here is this, that a mentally oppressed people is not aware of his oppression. And that is the tragedy. So people who repeat the language of Stratcom about state capture, Zuma is the problem, the Guptas are a problem, they've internalized this. They believe they have come to that conclusion out of their own independent thought processes. The fact that they hate black people, they believe this is a natural process and they are telling the truth as it is. But no, they are repeating the schema, the thought process of the oppressor. They are repeating the discourse, the narrative of the oppressor, but they've internalized as their own. So when a black person says Zuma is the problem, Zuma and the Guptas are a problem, they honestly believe that they are speaking the truth from their authentic mental frame. But in fact, no, they are simply regurgitating that which has been given to them by the enemy. So we have to disrupt that mental enslavement to make black people to start thinking from a black perspective again. And that is the education that all revolutionary organizations must undertake. Because Biko says this is important because it is necessary to realize that the only vehicle for change are these people who have lost their personality. And then he says, the first step, therefore, is to make the black man come to himself, to pump back life into the empty shell, to infuse him with pride and dignity, to remind him that his complicity in the crime of allowing himself to be misused and therefore letting evil reign supreme in the country of his birth. This is what we mean by black consciousness. So Steve Biko says, unfortunately, these people, these black people who have internalized their oppression are the vehicle for revolutionary change. And those of us who want that change have to bring this consciousness to them, these people who have lost their personality, so that they undertake the process of liberation. We need to teach black people about oppression. As Nelly Fuller explains, if you don't know what racism and white supremacy are, you are likely to be easily manipulated. We are today in this situation where we're praising whiteness. We're here in the situation where black people don't see anything wrong with voting for the Democratic Alliance, which is a party of white people, of white oppression, of land thieves. We are today praising a white boy who is taking the space of black people to speak on behalf of black people. These all are part of the reversal of radical consciousness from our people. Steve Biko, who teaches us black consciousness and black pride, formed a political organization that excluded white people, all of them, including his white friends. They could not become part of the Black consciousness movement because the Black consciousness movement had to represent the Black voices, the Black aspiration, and Black fears on our own. We cannot be spoken for by any white person. It's an insult that must not be tolerated. It's an insult that must be rejected. Black people, you are on your own. We have to represent ourselves. We have to speak for ourselves. No white voice must be allowed to represent our interests. White people have destroyed us. White people have oppressed us. We are in this situation because of white people. White people cannot be the problem and the solution at the same time. It cannot be. This idea of us valorizing white people, it is part of mental enslavement, which we must overcome. We must reject whiteness in total, including the abelungu abasthandayo. Steve Biko understood that very well. Bakhona abelungu abasthandayo. And that is why, black people here talk about Joe Slovo and so on. In fact, in the next live, I'm going to talk about the place of the white liberal in the liberation struggle of black people. Today, I just wanted to quickly go through the process of enslaving the mind of black people. And I think I've covered that. I've alluded to the three institutions and how they operate and why we are where we are today. The white system has invested in a layer of black people who are going to represent it. And when they represent it, they might not even need white representation. But KADA does not even want to give us political power, does not want the indirect management. It wants to manage things on its own. And it is going to rely on the black vote to do so. Abantu abamnyama, we must be very careful. Abelungu have figured us out. They know we hate each other. And they're using that to make sure that they get back to actual political power, even over and above the economic power they still hold. And if you are not careful, white people are going to rule over us once again. That is that for today. Thank you for tuning in. Let us meet again next Sunday. And I shall respond to some of the comments that some of you have made. And next Sunday, as I say, we're going to talk about the place of the white revolutionary and what does it mean for the black revolutionary struggle. Let us go back and read Steve Biko. He has analyzed the black problem in some great detail. And he's speaking from the experience of South Africa. Once you understand where Steve Biko is coming from, a lot of things will become clear. You will not be so easily duped. And you will have a healthy dislike of whiteness and white leadership and white representation. Black people, this Christian notion of acceptance, it is part of what's killing us. This Christian thing of loving the enemy is part of what is killing us. Because white people have given us this Christian, even if you are not going to church, but your demeanor, your thought processes are Christian, are developed by that Christian ethic. Particularly the sheepish aspects of the Christian ethic that says give the other cheek when they hit you on the other cheek. That is why we embrace whiteness. So that's why we talk about peace. That is why we talk about togetherness. That is why we talk about forgetting and not talk about justice. We are a defeated people mentally, and we really have to work on ourselves with that regard. We need black consciousness to be able to respect blackness, appreciate blackness, and be intolerant of any white racism that is being perpetuated against us, including this acceptance of the Democratic Alliance and this white boy. Any black consciousness person would reject that in total immediately. But we accept this because we don't have the consciousness. We are a people without a standpoint of where we're coming from and where we move from and where we are going. We are lost. And therefore, any leadership that seems to sound like any white person that seems to speak our language, we embrace them, we hold on to them, we valorize them. Because, of course, whiteness is the sickness that is inflicting the black mind up to today. But that white person inside our heads, inside our minds, which is controlling our thought processes, we must go to that little white man and destroy them so that the black person can emerge. People, sisengxakini. And I know I'm seen as a madman because you love white people so much. So much. It's shocking how much black people love white people in this country, despite the fact that all the problems that we have up to today are created by white people. And white people continue to benefit from our exclusion and our oppression and our landlessness. The enemy is white. The enemy of black people is white people and the white systems that they've created. The ANC is just a bodyguard of whiteness. Even if we defeat the ANC tomorrow, we'll not have the land, we'll not have the economy, because these things are held by white people. And now you are allowing white people to speak on our behalf. You are voting for white people. We really have to work our minds. Because as Steve Biko says, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Izwe lethu.